Okay, I think we're up. Yippee! Yippee! Yes. Okay, I see it on stream. Yay! Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this final panel of the AuFiCon today. We are going to be discussing character depictions in an audio-only medium. Audio slash visual, as the title says. And since we are audio fiction creators, audio only medium. Yes, indeed. So, I have three lovely panelists with me that I would love to introduce y'all to. So let's start going down the line. Hero, can we get your introduction as well? Your name, pronouns, and what you do.
Hello, I am Hero. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the writer and sort of principal producer at Monstrous Productions. We make queer, cozy science fantasy and, science fiction and fantasy. So our shows are Monstrous Agonies, which was a late night radio advice show for monsters, and Travelling Light, which is about exploring the galaxy and meeting different cultures and so on. So I'm delighted to be here. I was on the first panel. I'm on the last panel. I'm very excited to
You're the
be
opener and the
bookending.
closer. Hey,
Exactly.
let's go.
Let's go.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Hero, for your introduction. Let's go right down the line. Doodles, would you like to let us know who you are?
Yes, of course. I'm Doodles. I go. Oh my god, sorry. I go by any pronouns.
Bless you.
And yeah, I've been having coughs a bunch lately, but that's okay. I'm Doodles. I go by any pronouns, and I'm the creator, writer, director, and most importantly, artist of the podcast Becker Tales, which is an anthology horror fantasy audio drama. And before that, I've been mostly a fan artist in the audio drama community. So I got quite a little bit of experience in visually depicting audio dramas, let's just say.
Very good. Thank you so much, Doodles. Happy to have you. And finally, our lighthouse and Milky Way. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
It's me. Hello, I'm Emma, currently depicted by Lighthouse and Milky Way, which brings me genuinely so much joy. I think it's perfect. I am a writer and an actor, and in voice acting, I have been voice acting in audio dramas on and off for several years, in shows like Breathing Space and The Book of Ezekiel Bradshaw. I write plays and scripts for stage and for audio. I wrote and acted in the audio drama Arrhythmia, which released last summer, which is a haunted house horror audio drama. I've been writing for the upcoming This Address Does Not Exist anthology, which is also haunted house. I think it's a bit of a trend. And very, very recently, I also wrote your podcast on air script 2 days ago that will be played in its entirety very shortly after this panel, which is extremely exciting.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Emma, what are your pronouns as well?
She, her pronouns are good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's for me as much for anyone listening in. So that's why I made sure. Thank you so much, Emma. And finally, introducing myself. My name is Rowan. I am the CEO and producer of Twin Strangers Productions, which is another audio fiction network. And I do mostly sci-fi horror stuff. Yippee!
And what are your pronouns, Rowan?
My pronouns are they, them. Thank you, Hero. I'm sorry. You're so right. You're so right. Right after I got on to Emma about that. Dang. Dang, we're already here. Thank y'all so much for joining us, and thank you to the audience for being here to listen. I'm very excited about this topic because I think it is very interesting. As y'all know, anyone who's listening and our panelists here, we mainly do audio fiction, which is normally not accompanied by visuals other than maybe a cover art, a fan art, a episode depiction every now and then. Um, but especially regarding characters, I think it's an interesting topic to go into because of the varied opinions on all of this. So, um, I have a few questions for our panelists, and I think we'll kind of cover everything through those questions. So let's go ahead and start off with the first one. Um, this is one of the interesting things about audio fiction. Do y'all think that visuals, as in appearances, any sort of things like that, can be gained without specific appearance depictions? And that goes as far as to say someone talking to one of the characters and they're like, oh yes, this curly haired individual with a brown jacket and jeans or whatever, that sort of thing. Is there a way to gain those visuals without saying that verbatim? Emma, let's start with you.
Uh, See, my answer when there's always a question just related to is it possible to do a certain thing in a certain medium is always that there's is always to err on the side of yes. I have
Hmm.
a great love for uh the fact that audio fiction can do a lot of things that when I started listening to it, let alone making it, would not have been able to uh guess offhand it could do.
Hmm.
So I certainly think that there are ways to communicate without directly narrating as you would in, say, a book where you have a lot of leeway to write a paragraph of description about a visual. I certainly
Hmm.
think there are ways to communicate that through audio. And what it is winds up depending heavily on storytelling method and what an individual script looks like.
Hmm. Yeah, very, very succinct there. Yeah, absolutely. Books have the leisure of having those paragraphs to depict a person, but audio dramas, you have to keep their attention, right? It's very much you're telling a story, however medium it goes, and you want them to be able to grasp things without droning on and all of that. So yeah, absolutely. Hero, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because both of our current shows, Monstrous Agonies and Traveling Light, are very narrative. So
Mm.
it does make sense for a character to say, you know, I was looking at this person and they looked like this.
Mm.
But we actually just finished a casting call for our new show, The Lion and the Adder, which will hopefully be coming out later this year. Um,
Stay
and
tuned,
that's
everyone.
much. I know. Lock in, it's going to be great. But that's much more of a traditional sort of radio drama format, like, full cast kind of thing. Um, and one of the things I was very aware of was if a person is going to be saying that they've noticed something about another character, for example, um, thinking about what it is that they are likely to notice,
Mm.
and what stands out and what's noteworthy to the narrating character.
Mm.
Um, so I think about in Traveling Light, we very rarely have the traveler really say, that's our protagonist, sorry, um, really give a lot of detail, but they will say, this person's face furled and unfurled with their tendrils waving, and you sort of get an idea that
Oh.
maybe waving tendrils are not normal for this human character because that's
Mm.
what they're noticing. Um, or you might have a character in The Lion and the Adder who's like, oh, there's a woman over there wearing a man's jacket, because that's actually the most notable thing about them. Like,
Mm.
they're looking at this person and seeing that. So I think that's an interesting way to get in there, is to think about how many of us really think, oh, there's a 5'6" brunette with
Mm.
glasses, and how many of
Right.
us think, wow, she's wearing a leopard print puffer jacket. That's notable. you know,
That's a choice. We
that's a
love it.
choice. Yeah, so those are my thoughts really. But as Emma said, I mean, the can this happen? Absolutely. Like,
Mm.
it's audio fiction. Do what you want. But I think you have to be
Absolutely.
intentional about how it's happening and
Mm.
why as well.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Great, great answer there. especially when you have the different types of fiction podcasts, like you're saying, a narrative and also a generalized radio play kind of style, where there are different ways to do it. Narrative being more descriptive and, a person just echoing thoughts essentially, and then an actual, like real in the moment sort of audio drama where it's like, oh yeah, you wouldn't describe someone as being 5'2", blonde, etc. You
Mm.
would indeed be like, yeah, that's odd that they're wearing a leather jacket in the Florida summer, that kind of thing. Absolutely, absolutely. Very good point. Doodles, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes. It's not a big thing, but sometimes you can also gain some information through context clues.
Mm,
For example, the places where a character is or goes to, you can, like, not much, but sometimes you can get a feeling of the type of, I don't know, attire they wear if they work a certain type of job that is like more business-like.
mm,
And I listen to more horror audio drama,
mm,
where it is quite common for a character to get injured, and
mm,
that's also a thing that's less traditional, like, oh, what the hair color, how tall they are, but you can get an idea of possible scars and stuff through the events that happen, which is always interesting when depicting them in fan art, seeing how different events of the show would affect their appearance. They're obviously not gonna say, "Oh yeah, I had this fight and now I have this massive scar,"
mm.
but you can get an idea
Mm.
with the stuff that happens. So
Yeah,
yeah, you
absolutely.
can gain. Not like always. Some audio dramas have it more difficult than others. Others are more explicit, but usually
Mhm.
there's small details that you can catch here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, pointing out those context clues where people's environments are different, or, even the weather, that kind of thing, where people are maybe heavily dressed because it's snowing or something like that. A bunch of context clues you can get from those type of situations. So, and I love that y'all are all like, yes, of course you can, because you can do anything in audio drama. And that is the attitude to
Exactly.
have.
That's the thing, right?
That
The
is
the
beautiful.
only the only thing that's impossible is what you tell yourself that is impossible.
Mm,
You
mm.
just need
So
to
true.
believe in yourself.
Listen to Doodles, everyone. Listen
That's
to
my advice,
Doodles.
not only to audio drama creators, but to everyone in general. You can do
Mm-hmm.
anything. The only thing stopping you is yourself. Put that in a like a static quote. I'm the first person to say that.
Put that on a t-shirt, everyone. All
Yeah,
right. AuFiCon merch. Are you listening? Put it on a t-shirt. Amazing, amazing. Yes, absolutely. I love the fact that you are never tied down by anything but your own beliefs. Heck yeah. All right. So that's a little bit of how visuals can be gained, or how that, goes about having a little bit of cues or whatnot in narrative or non-narrative work. Um, I have a sort of interesting question here, regarding stereotypes. Now, since we are in the usually fiction realm of media, we're all familiar with stereotypes that might be like jock, nerd, you know, prep, all that kind of stuff. Um, do you think that they can be useful as depictions for characters? Like, do you think people can get a general idea from stereotypes that might exist? Or do you think they should just be fully thrown out the window and we shouldn't care about stereotypes at all? Hero, do you want to start us out with that one?
Oh, I love that you came to me. I was like, what a good question. I hope somebody else has a really thoughtful answer that I can build on.
Oh, my bad, bro.
yeah,
No, I
it's a
think
complicated question.
it is a difficult question.
Mm-hmm.
I think what makes it difficult is that as much as you as a writer might want to throw out stereotypes,
Mm,
um, you can't make that happen for your audience.
mm,
Your audience is always bringing themselves to the page. That's something that we sort of play with a lot in our shows because we have like active audience participation. Um, and so we really want to meet our audience where they are and say like, what do you think's going on here? Um, and that's on the one hand, that's really, really fun, but at the same time, there are limits to how much you can stop people from making certain associations, you know. So I think I don't think it's a hard and fast sort of either they're good or they're bad, right? Like obviously some stereotypes are just flat out bad and you
Yeah.
should not do that, right? But if we're talking more the kind of like jock prep kind of, you know, um no real people are actually like deeply identifying as a jock and it's really harmful to them to have jock culture misrepresented, you know.
Right.
Um
Absolutely.
yeah, if you're talking about that sort of level of things, I think it's really about being aware of what you're doing and why, and whether you're riffing on a stereotype, whether you're relying on a stereotype, or whether you're subverting it. And I think they all have valid artistic uses, you know. Um, but you do have to know what you're doing. And I think the problem with stereotypes is that they encourage I mean, bluntly, they encourage lazy thinking. You know, you don't make a character, you make a jock. And you're like, "Right,
Right.
but, like, you could have made a guy instead." Do you know what I mean?
Who are they? Are they
Who
just
are
Ken?
they?
Or
Exactly. Exactly, exactly. And so, you know, I think it's you know, stereotypes are something that you have to be aware of because you have to be aware that this is something that your audience are gonna be bringing with them. And so to think carefully about like, what am I doing with this? Am I meeting their expectations? Am I challenging them in some way? Or am I just going like, the gangster goons, them, you know, like,
the
are you just
goons, you
letting
know
them
them.
do you know them? Those guys you've seen in all those movies, it's them. It's just them again, okay? Like, let's get on with the scene. These guys are not important. Like, you know these guys. Yeah, so I think it's really just about intentionality for me personally.
Yeah. Great point there. Yeah. Definitely putting that intention there. But also the recognition that once you have art out into the world, people are going to interpret it differently.
Mm. Mhm.
And I think that's a really valuable thing to not, put that intention that you have into the media that you're creating, but knowing that some people just might take it differently. And that's
Mhm.
valid. That's okay to do. Very, very good. Very insightful, Hero. Thank you. Doodles,
Thank
did
you.
you want to add anything to that? Of course.
Yes. See, here's the thing. I am studying animation, right? And not only am I studying animation, but I want to go into character design. So, like, as a career. And so thinking about stereotypes does become an important part of character design because it's about how you, like the first impression that people get of your character and how do you convey that, right? So I think it goes into this as well because stereotypes of the jock, the prep, the nerd are a good way to get your point across, you know?
Right, right.
Um, However, at the same time, if you go too much into that, characters can easily become one dimensional. And that is something that happens in fandom quite a little bit, unfortunately. Someone will grab one aspect of a character and will run with it, and it becomes all they are. So, an interesting part about dealing with stereotypes when creating a character, which then translates to their design, that I like to do is think of a stereotype, the thing that you always think about an archetype, and starting with that, but then giving some sort of twist. And that way, like for example, there's this one character that I used to work with a lot who was the protagonist of this superhero story, but her power was that she she went unnoticed. That was her superpower. People didn't notice her. So you're grabbing this concept of a superhero and turning it into someone that doesn't get noticed. You can grab any stereotype and give it your own unique twist, and that gives people something to work of, right? You give someone an academic character, so they're probably gonna go with classic academic stuff like I don't know, wearing ties and dress plans and whatever. And then you give them a twist, making them a tired academic that doesn't get any sleep, which, let's be honest, that's probably more your average academic, but the stereotype is that they're like put together, you know? So that, from an artist point of view, immediately gives you an image to work off without having to give any like actual visual description. I'm not sure if I'm fully making that much sense right now.
No, absolutely. I definitely understand what you're saying. So, using stereotypes to kind of give that first impression of what a character might look
Yes,
at, like, but having your own twist to it to add dimension to it and make it
exactly.
not just,
Give
plain
give
go.
people give people an easy thing to work with, and from there build on it, because it's easier to say what a character is not rather than what a character is. That way you both differentiate yourself and give people something to grab onto.
Right. Yeah, dealing with negatives rather than the entire possibilities of what a character could encompass. Very, very good points there. I definitely think that's true in that, you know, it's about using those stereotypes to make a foundation, some familiarity with the audience, but then turning it on its head and making it your own, right?
Exactly.
Very, very insightful, Doodles. Thank you. Emma, did you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, both of those are really, really good points made by both of you. I'm always really fascinated as a writer and then as a consumer of media and just on every level that I engage with stories by, I think kind of the best way to phrase it would be by looking at walking the line between stereotype and almost what I would call narrative shorthand,
Mm.
where I am when I am working on telling a story in whatever medium, something that is always on my mind for both physical and non-physical details relating to a character is always the quickest, most efficient, not always most subtle, but quick, efficient, natural ways to communicate information within a story. Uh, whether that be to move the plot forward, to establish something that is going to be relevant for the plot later. But it's always on my mind. How can I, especially in an audio medium where, again, I will never say anything's impossible in an audio medium because I don't believe in restricting the medium like that. I do always think about, it is a lot more easy to narrow it down to what is present as a factor I can play with, which in this case is audio files and not visual files, typically directly tied to that, like you would in a show. And so I'm always thinking through with the power of audio and words, how can I efficiently establish a detail that I need to establish? And trying to, it's always an ongoing and really interesting process, both in my work and seeing how other people are doing it, watching the line get walked between those aspects where finding narrative shorthand ways to communicate something efficiently while looking to, if if you're leaning heavily into a stereotype, is that because you are planning to do something with that intentionally? And like you said, talking about intention, are you leaning into that initially for the sake of setting up a subversion or a discussion or exploration of that in the future? Or are you leaning into it because it is the easiest way and for no other reason? And if so, uh, how can how can you revisit that and challenge yourself to break out of that and find a different way to approach that angle?
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent, excellent points there, Emma. Challenging yourself to not only use those stereotypes initially, maybe, but building off of them and making it your own, and figuring out what is distinct in your stories is extremely important, I think. And yeah, kind of building off of Emma's statements there. I think we can go into one of our other questions, which is with us only having, I say only, quote unquote, the medium of audio and words, as Emma said. Um, what are some ways to maybe inform an audience in audio fiction um, about physical characteristics? So we've talked about a little bit with Doodles mentioning, context clues regarding environment. We've talked a little bit about, more narrative style where they might actually describe something or point something out. Is there any way to inform the audience about physical characteristics in a different way, like audio format, specifically with SFX and Foley, or maybe even with some dialogue choices that the characters might have? Emma, do you want to build off of that?
Totally. Yeah. As I just said, I love finding in any script one of my favorite games I play with myself as a writer, and I love seeing other people do it. It's my favorite thing is ways to slip in. Exposition is not always the term for it, but finding ways to make details, appearance, descriptions, and points of narrative exposition seem as natural as possible is such an interesting journey every time. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite ways to stretch my brain and think about a problem differently, because you typically don't have people on an everyday basis starting each conversation by reciting a full description of the location, scene, and each other's descriptions to each other. That would be, I mean, if you do, then maybe that speaks to something else about what the script's about. But normally in my day to day, I don't encounter that in real life. So finding other ways to communicate that info for me, I'm trying to think of ones that I've used before or seen before. I know that I've had putting characters in positions where they cannot see one another and that information needs to be communicated to move something forward. Like if you're on the phone with somebody who you're looking to meet for the first time at a bus station, and so you would need to ask them, who am I looking for? Describing other people to others, sometimes having two characters who need to talk about a third, can become an instance for that's a little bit more of a naturalistic way, I think, in everyday that I've talked about people's appearance or physicalities if I'm talking about a third person that's not present. Uh, I also love thinking about, and this does go into visual in a way, but visual, physical in a way that's interesting. I love thinking about the items and environments that surround appearance and how you can utilize those. Like I think the ones that are coming to my mind off the bat are if a character is going to have dyed hair, then there's a box of hair dye somewhere nearby. And if you communicate that as a physical detail, then you are giving the listener a clue into that aspect of their appearance.
Yeah.
So finding little ways to drop that information in is a really exciting game every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. Being like, it's an exciting game to put this little naturalistic moment that people might not realize is actually me describing something and a little bit of exposition, as it might be. One of the things I think about personally with my show Syntax, we have one of our main characters named Cassius, and uh, we make the point that they're shorter than people might have thought by having another member have to take a picture for them because they couldn't get everyone in the frame. And that always makes me laugh a little because I'm like, haha, that was so funny. And also a fun little game. I totally agree, Emma. Hero, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think so in Monstrous Agonies and Traveling Light, Monstrous Agonies was very like, we are simply not describing anything. like,
We love
and
that
because,
challenge.
right, and because both of those shows, we don't really have any sound design either. Like it's all very, very much narrative and people just talking. And it really made me think about what what is it? How am I trying to phrase this? what is it that I want you to get from this physical description? So for example, like, do you actually need to know how tall this person is? Or do you need to get the sense that they're a big guy? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so we don't, you're gonna picture if a character comes in as like, "Hi, this is how I talk." You're gonna have a sort of I have not practiced this. Please don't judge my entire audio drama career on the voices I'm doing. um, but yeah, you're gonna use um, going back to the sort of stereotypes question. People are going to have certain associations with certain kinds of voice
Mm-hmm.
that are going to impact their sort of character design in their mind's eye. And so I think it's really about thinking carefully about is it important that this character, for example, has dyed hair? Or is it important that this character feels like the kind of person who would have dyed hair, if that makes sense? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, sort of thinking very carefully about what it is exactly that you're trying to express. Um, and is that about what they look like, or is that about the associations that people will have with what they look like, if that makes sense? Um, yeah, and I think yeah, on a more practical level, I do in the new show coming up. I do have some examples of a character not being able to reach things because he's wee.
Heck yeah. He's wee. I love
He's
that.
wee. He's just wee. He's a dinky little pocket guy. um, yeah, and I think that's sort of it for me is thinking about like, is this character's physicality, why is this why is this physical aspect important, and
Mm.
what is it that I'm actually trying to express with this, and therefore can I express that in some other way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of going back to that intentionality that we spoke about before,
Mm,
where we're talking about, what is the actual important thing that they get from this character.
mhm,
And if we are going to use some visual descriptors or anything, why is that the one we're using? Why is that important? Right?
mhm.
Very, very good point there, Hero. And then building off of that, Doodles, did you want to add anything?
When referring to more of like the audio design of
Mm-hmm.
things, a thing that I think is interesting when describing a character also is the sort of sound cues and sound effects that accompany them,
Mm.
which is something a bit more subtle, but the way they walk is something that I feel can give people some information, which again is very subtle, but I'm thinking about a character who uses, for example, a mobility aid that is not something that, well, it is something that can be mentioned about a character, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it can be accompanied by a sound effect of them using a cane, or I'm also thinking about a character that has a lot of accessories that they're gonna clinkle and make noise when they move around,
Mm.
which is another way of utilizing this audio only medium to give those cues about a character's appearance and stuff without actually having to verbalize it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Making those little sound effects and cues very distinct. Doodles, I am shaking your hand with my catalog of footsteps that are categorically, organized by character that I have. So
Exactly,
very,
like
very
some
good.
like the way a character walks can give you a lot of information about them, even if you don't like consciously think about it. This is more for people
Mm-hmm.
who sit down and really start to like analyze what's going on.
Yeah, it's for the insane sound designers, but also people really do recognize it sometimes. They really do.
I have to
And
ask,
Yeah,
is there any other
yeah,
kind of sound designer except the insane sort?
I
amazing
hope
question.
not. I hope not, genuinely. Because what is more fun than being insane with sound design, honestly.
Yeah, I've very recently gotten into sound design. I've only been doing it for like half a year, and I'm already going insane. This is just how it is.
It's a very
Mm.
chicken and egg thing. Like you have to be insane to get into sound design, and then it also makes you insane, I think.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Also, I would love to point out, you all just heard a sneak peek of Hero's next character in Monstrous Agony, so thank you for doing that example for us.
You're so welcome.
Yes, yes, I love it.
Yes.
A little question from Cal in the chat, which I love this question because I do this with my characters. Um, they would love to know how people, us, as writers and sound designers, would personally depict to the audience that a character is pompous and entitled. Dress shoes. Did y'all have anything?
um, to show that a character is entitled, I actually sort of have this in Becker Tales, an episode that isn't released yet. So here's some looking forward to it. It releases later this month. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Um,
You
where
heard it here first.
there's this character who has grown up quite privileged, and she thinks she's better than other people.
Mm,
Um, but that is not something that like it's not something that she explicitly says. However, I tried to convey it through the way that she talks with and about other people. For example,
mm-hmm,
there's this one character that she believes she's better than, so whenever she gets the chance, she tries to push him down
mm,
with little remarks and comments that make her feel superior to show that she views herself as better than. And also, she um, barges into this other character's room while the main character is like actively doing something important, and she just, oh yeah, I just felt like coming in. What about it? You know, she,
rude.
yeah, she is a little bit rude, but she doesn't see herself as rude. She just goes around doing whatever she wants because she can, and that's the thing
Mm,
that an entitled character would do. She hasn't had people saying no to her a lot,
mm-hmm,
so she's used to getting away with things, which is how you depict. Well, I have depicted this entitled character. She just goes around um, with this big attitude where she feels superior, so she is entitled and she gets away with it.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Showing that superiority just because they haven't been told no much in their life. Yeah, absolutely a way to show it. Hero and Emma, did y'all have any other things to add that might fit a pompous or, you know, super annoying character?
Yeah, for pompous and entitled, those are two. I was about to say those are two wonderful traits, which I feel like could be misinterpreted, but they're really interesting, juicy traits to me. So I
Mm-hmm,
find them
they
fun as a
are.
writer. Those are traits that because that I am almost always going to try to spin out in the narrative in some way if I'm trying to put those into a character, which can lead to some really fun ways of structuring, especially in audio drama. I This is very far in the future. This is the draft I'm working on that may see the light of day in a year or 3 years or five. We'll never know. But I know that I've got, for example, two characters that I'm working on in a faraway project that are both very, 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 very entitled, come from very, very rich backgrounds, or so actually specifically are both celebrities in their world.
Mm,
And I know
mm-hmm,
that's something that I will be playing with at some point, and I have not actually decided the order in which I think it's most efficient to convey this. Is that there will be present in the story both instances in this case of how they talk and act when they're sort of in their comfort zone, which for them is like interviews and fancy parties and extremely upper class events, versus a
mm,
lot of the bulk of the story takes place with them both heavily out of their comfort zone, in the middle of nowhere, with people who do not respect uh, the things that they've grown up taking for granted. And I actually haven't decided yet if it's more interesting to showcase that fish out of water side first, where the entitlement really gets highlighted, or to showcase the sort of that background first, because it will be flipping around timeline wise a lot. I don't know which of those I think is more effective for driving it home. But yeah, for me, a lot of that is through narrative, what I'm showing, who people are talking to, and how they talk to different people in different places, what that reveals about them and their biases. Uh, and then if you're talking pure sound cues, I loved what you said about dress shoes. I love sound cues because you can't sound cue everything that anyone is wearing at all times necessarily. I mean, you could try. I'll never say you can't try. Again, you can certainly try. It just might be a little. It might drive the sound designers a little bit mad. But uh, that does mean to me that when somebody chooses to emphasize something like type of shoe or the sound of somebody wearing jewelry or a watch or something, that is a detail that I will hone in on as potentially indicating more about them. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hero, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah. So for entitled characters, one of our principal characters actually in Traveling Light is a character who comes from a very privileged background, but who is very much you're supposed to like them. Do you know? Like you're very much supposed to like them and feel very fond towards them. So that was sort of an interesting thing to explore of how do you indicate that this person is first and foremost kind of just assuming that the whole world is about them, but you don't mind that much, you know? And so we did that with, things like they would just show up at our protagonist's bedroom door and be like, "Hello, I'm bored." And it's like, "Well, what do you want me to do?" "Well, I'm bored, so entertain me, obviously."
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and then, and I think when you have recurring characters, that is a little easier to explore because you can put them in lots of different situations and explore how they react to different, external, stimulus. But in Monstrous Agonies, we were often dealing with characters who were only appearing for half an episode. Do you know, they've written one letter into this late night radio show, and we've got maybe 5 to 10 maximum minutes to get to know them. And those are the times when I really lean on stereotypes, to go back to the earlier question. Because if you have a character who talks like this, you're going to get a very quick idea of who that person is. And you don't really need to see them in a lot of different lights to go like, yes, I know who you are. And so I think in those sort of situations, shorthands, as Emma was talking about, can be really, really helpful. If you're like, look, just it's that guy. You know that guy? It's that guy. you know? Um, yeah, so I think again, just sort of playing with what your audience's expectations might be around that, and leaning in where it's appropriate to lean in.
Absolutely. Yeah, very, very interesting points made by everyone. I think it's about the narrative, about the sound design, about dialogue, and sometimes you just know what they are.
You just do a silly voice, man.
You just do a silly voice, and sometimes you're like, yeah, they're pompous.
Exactly. Exactly.
Perfect, perfect, amazing. All right, let's go ahead and go into the next question that I have for y'all, which is this one is also kind of a. I think it's not difficult, but I think it's maybe a little bit polarizing for creators in audio fiction spaces uh, in particular. Um, what are your viewpoints on accurately representing a character by giving full details about their appearance or their, you know, overall being, or letting the listener form that appearance with their imagination, as in no depictions at all, where you just let the audience run wild, as it were, with what they might imagine the characters as in fan arts, in fan fiction, any kind of scenario where they might be describing a character with more scrutiny, as it were. Emma, would you like to start us off with that?
Oh yeah, it's not to make a name for myself as the one who will always respond to a question with "it depends." I just love nuance. What can I say? Yeah,
Mm,
it's very interesting, and for me, I think always very situational, especially depending on what in this case is being represented, what the creator uh, is intending with a character, so on and so forth. Like I know that for me, as a general trend, speaking generally, one of the things that I love most with working with audio fiction scripts is the almost interactivity of it with a listener. I really, really love that by taking out the visual element, it's terrifying and wonderful because, on the one hand, it
mm,
removes a large aspect of my storytelling that I would in other mediums have a degree of control over. But on the other hand, it allows for this wonderful freedom for the listener to form a picture in their mind, paint the character as they wish. And I think that's delightful. I think that is a strength of the medium in many ways that it has the potential to do that. You can tell a whole story and not actually see the character, and thus the audio drama I listen to in my mind is a unique experience to me to some degree.
mm.
So I've always loved that. I love that aspect of the medium genuinely because I think it is extremely meaningful. I think it is something that almost no other medium has in exactly the same way that audio dramas do. Books
Mhm.
have that paint your own picture in your mind, but everyone may still read the words a little bit differently. Audio fiction, you're hearing the same performances, but with that element removed. And so I do love that. But I also think that I think that there is a temptation with that to sometimes it would be very easy, I think, in many contexts to say, oh, you don't you all that matters to depict is what's happening with the characters and the plot, and
Mm,
depicting any other aspect of them, that's not important because it's not for the story.
mm,
And that, of course, I think is a thing that a sentiment that undercuts, especially when you're talking about marginalized groups,
mm,
and depicting sometimes it is very important, especially from a creative perspective, to be to have elements of a character that are not necessarily one to one tied to a plot point in the story, but you do very much want to establish as being intrinsic to that character.
mhm,
And it's easy to undercut that by saying, well, like, oh, you don't need to depict that part of representation. That's not important to the story. Well, it is important. And
mhm.
it should be shown and communicated. So it really, I think, heavily shifts depending on each script and at the end of the day, what that creator needs out there in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully put, Emma. I definitely think it's important to have those characteristics if they are maybe a marginalized group or something. We had the panel yesterday, if y'all saw, about inclusive narratives regarding physical disabilities and neurodivergency and queer identities, where it can be very important to, be like, this person has a mobility aid. This person has, and they're an amputee, that sort of thing. Um, so making sure that it is known when it needs to be and not throwing that away so easily. But also, it really depends on the story, and I think also on the character themselves, depending on how the author of whatever thing you're listening to wants to make it more prevalent about. Very, very well put, Emma. Doodles, did you want to add anything onto that?
Yes. Well, yes, I like to add stuff, but I think Emma put it like very well. With the idea that it does depend on both the story, but also the things that you consider important in terms of representation, even if it's not relevant. In my case with audio dramas, added descriptions, like physical descriptions much,
Mm.
unless it becomes it's something that I want to highlight. For example, in Becker Tales, the characters that have physical descriptions are usually ones that have something supernatural about them,
Mm.
and uh, it is sort of to like the physical description. The fact that there is one is because there's something about that character that is strange. That is not necessarily physically strange. Like they look like a normal person, but there's an aura about them.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
to be fair, I do like a lot of quote unquote, well, not unquote unquote, literally, just legitimately official art for the show as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like not the necessity to do it, partially because it's not plot relevant, but I also because I do have the tool and the fact that I am an artist, I can use that visual outside of like bonus content.
Mm.
So again, it is a big question of it depends on both what the story needs and what the message that you want to carry across. Again, with the disability representation, maybe the message, like maybe it's not plot relevant, the fact that they're disabled, but it is a point that you want to carry across with their presentation. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
you pointed out. Other times, um, other times you want to do something, but you can't really get away with it in a way that sounds natural, and that's okay.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very situation dependent, but to be fair, I do like it when there's description of characters um,
Mm.
from a writer's perspective because I really do spend hours thinking about characters and I want to get all of my thoughts across. But also from a fun artist perspective, I I like having something to work with.
Yeah.
If I have to think of everything myself, I end up second guessing. So having a good starting point is always appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, talking about how it's, situation dependent, but also how it is nice to sometimes have a foundation. Same thing with stereotypes, right? We're talking about having that foundation, but being able to work off of it. Very good point, Doodles. Thank you very much. Hero, did you want to close us out with this question?
Yeah. So with Traveling Light, I actually co-created it with my partner Matthew, and he's an artist. And so every episode we have a bit of art going along with the episode,
Mm.
um, and occasionally he will draw. He won't draw our protagonist because we really love just leaving that to people's imaginations. The only information
Mm.
that they've really got is that they're short, because I love a short protagonist. What can I say?
Same. What can we say? We
I'm
love
like,
little
look, I'm
guys.
5'4" and I've got to put myself in something. Okay.
Right? Accurate.
Um, so that's really the only character that we have any like agreement that he will not draw.
Mm.
Whereas everyone else he kind of does, and it's really interesting because we have a few regular fans who will make fan art, and who will quite happily go like, respectfully, Matthew, I see your character design, and I am simply going to do my own thing, um, and we actively encourage that. We're like,
Mm.
um, one of Matthew's designs actually for one of our characters. I'm like, I don't. That's not my guy. That's his version of that guy. I don't know
That's
who
not
that
him.
is. Like, he is not nearly handsome enough. So moving on. Um, so yeah, I think if you have the ability to keep it open for people to come up with their own ideas, um, and I think there's a certain freedom in for us, like Traveling Light is relatively tiny. Like we're not a huge show at all.
Mm.
And it means that we don't have the sort of Welcome to Night Vale problem, or like the problem with sort of like the Magnus archives or something, where you've got so many fans creating fan art that this sort of fanon becomes
Right.
established. We simply do not have enough people drawing these characters for
Mm-hmm.
them to go, oh, that's what that guy looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that can be something that I imagine is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's wonderful that so many people are drawing your thing, but on the other hand, it's so lovely to have like paradoxically like few enough fans that they have a bit more freedom, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, yeah, and if you because we have a relatively small fandom, like we know most of our fan artists by name
Mhm.
and can directly feedback and say, we love this design for this character. That's fantastic. We love that it's different from our design for this character. Um,
Mhm.
which I can imagine must be harder if you have more people sort of producing content for you.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I think there's something interesting as well. This might be I don't want to throw a sort of hot potato topic into the conversation at 5 to 9.
Okay.
Um, but the question of representation, I think, is a really important one and a really interesting one.
Mm.
Where I've seen in certain fandoms, you have fan artists who want to have a sort of specifically a racially diverse cast of
Mm.
characters. And so they draw a racially diverse cast of characters for a not particularly racially diverse cast of actors. Do you know?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that I think is
Yes.
a really
Hmm.
fascinating phenomenon. Do you know, like a really interesting thing, and how do you navigate that as a
Mm.
creator, as an actor, as an artist? Um, yeah, I think I'm just gonna punt that out there. Say,
Yes, that really is a very interesting topic of conversation.
Mhm.
Um, if I may talk a
Yeah,
little
of
bit about
course.
it, that is actually something that I hadn't really thought about until relatively recently when I started getting more into the producing side of things.
Mm.
Because I really, really like drawing. Again, that is something that we've established. And I also really like drawing diverse people, like uh, people of color and everything. I like drawing all types of people.
Mhm.
And with some stuff, I do like drawing diverse cast, like diverse characters, even though the cast isn't very diverse. And uh, the Magnus Archives is an example that gets thrown around a lot.
Mm.
That is a fandom where the main character is usually depicted in fan art as a man of color, while the actor is white, right?
Mhm.
And when I first got into the fandom, I just copied what other people were drawing,
Mm.
right? Because it gave me something to work off of on. But with time, I started to realize, this is interesting. The reason why he's depicted that way, and it's a lot about headcanons. Like
Mhm.
I know the character probably wouldn't be a brown man, but I still enjoy drawing stuff, right?
mm,
It's
Mhm.
all about knowing when something is a headcanon and when something is canon, and that's something that in fandoms, particularly more like bigger fandoms, the lines can get blurred.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think having some fun with character design and drawing things the way that you like is beneficial, particularly again, for example, a very wide cast. There's some people who see themselves in a character because of a personality trait or their story aligns with them, so they want to draw the character like them.
mhm,
For
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
something that I do is give a lot of characters very big eyebrows because I have very big eyebrows and I have glasses, so I end up drawing a lot of characters with big eyebrows and glasses because that's my way of seeing myself in the character.
Mm.
People sometimes do that with characters of color, drawing them as characters of colors, even though the actor or the story is more white centered.
mm,
Mhm.
And as long as people realize that they're headcanons and that it's probably like not gonna be official and it's just for fun, I
mm,
Mm.
don't particularly see an issue with it. I do start seeing an issue with people start treating headcanons as canon and the line starts to get blurred. That's when things can get more complicated, which again is something that has happened in the Magnus Archives fandom from what I've seen sometimes. People saying that they're whitewashing characters that weren't necessarily people of color to begin with.
mm.
Mm. Mhm.
Like
And I think
having
that is where it gets tricky, you know?
exactly, like having fun with character design
Mm.
is again having fun, experimenting with how they could look. Does include like height, hair color, body shape,
Mhm.
and other stuff. But then again, it's like okay, but sometimes like also I see it in cartoons and stuff. People, it's not just audio drama. People sometimes draw white characters as people of color or given disabilities as well is something that I've seen
Mm.
just because you want to see yourself in them or you think it could be interesting.
Mhm.
It's all
Mhm.
about being aware of what is and isn't canon and what is and isn't included in the actual text and not giving extra value to a text just because of how you interpret or how you headcanon something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once again, having that medium that we have where us as artists have to put our art into the world and people don't necessarily have the same headcanons as us can be rewarding, but also can be different, right? And sort of coming off of Doodle's point there as well as Hero leading us in, let's take our fan question that we have. Um, how do you feel about headcanons, fanons, and canons not matching? Doodles, you definitely kind of went into it with specifically the Magnus archives and everything. Emma, did you want to give us any insight as to that as well?
I'm honestly not to dodge the question. Truly, as a creator, speaking exclusively from a not to add words into that question, but just say how do you feel as a creator? I'm
Mm-hmm.
honestly not sure, simply because I have never created a work that has, to my knowledge or my awareness, sort of expanded into any form of fan base aside from essentially just me and the people who work directly on it with me, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that I'm thinking about a lot as somebody who I do both my hobbies and my professional work to a degree are both creative, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, my professional work and my professional life is a lot more creative work that lives off of the internet, and my uh, sort of semi-professional, more hobby work is work that lives more on the internet and has the potential to potentially develop, a fan base, a life of its own, uh, which I love and respect dearly as a concept, and which also has not happened yet. And something that I am very aware of preemptively, again, even to that happening, is that I know as a creator, whenever I craft a work that will hit that someday, with no disrespect meant to anyone who would love it. I think that's the most wonderful thing in the world if people love the stories that I'm making. I also know that for that to happen, like in the future, for a fan base regarding my work that would be crafting art and canons and their own take on it, I would be as uninvolved as possible, just
Mm-hmm.
because I think I'm always very hyper conscious that for that to happen someday, for me to gain a fan following for any of the stories that I'm telling, that I would wish to be divorced from that in every way I could. Not because I do not love that people love my stories, but because they should have the license and latitude to experience them as they wish without me as
Mm-hmm.
the voice of God, and that I also should have some separation there for my own sanity, so that I do not get too into my own head about being prescribed in what I create. So yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially over the past year or two, as I've started to put more of my work out into the world, that I know, probably both for better and worse, uh, I would the more anything I make spreads on the internet, the more I know I will likely want to not be aware of its spread, which has benefits and
Mm.
problems. And I don't really know how I plan to navigate that in the future.
Yeah, very fair. I think, the difference of, separating yourself from fanon artwork and having that removal, being like, yeah, it's totally fun that people depict it in certain ways, but it's not my headcanon, and that is okay. Hero, did you want to add any little insight before we close it out?
Yeah, I think it's sort of two different conversations, right? Of like
Mm-hmm.
the individual, like how do you as a creator about your show feel about this? And then the broader conversation of
Mm-hmm.
trends and themes and sort of cultural habits, um, which I think is difficult because it's very hard not to feel like that's personal. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you say like I've noticed a trend in fandom to draw white characters as people of color and
Mm-hmm.
not to listen to shows by people of color.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
not saying it's wrong of you to draw that. Do you know? You're saying I'm noticing a
Yeah.
trend and I want to talk about a trend. I want to talk about a habit. Um, and when it comes down to the individual thing, I think Emma's totally right. Like I think you've got to like let go and just be like, look,
Mm-hmm.
I put my thing out there, and the whole point was that you were going to pick it up and run with it, and you
Yep.
have. And maybe you've run off in a crazy to me direction, but you're having so much fun, and I can't, I can't control that.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And at the same time, to like, you want to use your own experiences as ways of talking about things. So,
Mm-hmm.
I played a character called Sibling Rain in the Siltverses, and a lot of people.
It was you.
It was me. Drowned
I
live
I
on
also I also
microphone.
just had a moment going, oh
Dude,
oh my
I
goodness.
literally went in
Oh
real
my
life.
lord.
That was me. I spent
Crazy
so many
lore drop.
hours in a booth going, High Prophet Faulkner, High Prophet, in various different tones.
Amazing.
But seeing the fan art of that character was phenomenal, incredible,
Mm.
wonderful.
Mm.
And I noticed that a lot of people drew them as sort of recognizably AFAB trans mask, which is
Mm.
what I am. And
And
so
you're
that's
like,
fine. But you're like, am I only allowed to play AFAB trans masks? Is that,
Mm-hmm.
is my voice always going to be interpreted as that? And that's,
Mm.
I really want to emphasize, I'm not being euphemistic when I say that's a really interesting question. I'm not like, oh, interesting. I mean, genuinely, it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
Seeing the
it is,
audience perspective is very
yeah,
interesting.
it's genuinely really, really interesting to me to think like, what is it about this character that inspires this response? And
Mm.
what is it about this fandom culture that inspires this response and so on? And I think, yeah, like those are fascinating and ongoing, healthy conversations that I think as long as you're going into them with a kind of open heart and sort of listening in a generous way, I think there's an awful lot to be explored in that. Yeah. Mic drop from Sibling Rain.
Mic drop. Now you know.
Now you know. High
Everyone is gonna
profit. High
rage at
profit.
you. Amazing, amazing responses, guys. Thank y'all so much. Thank you in the chat for the question specifically. I very much appreciate it. And with that, we are going to go ahead and wrap up this panel, guys. Thank y'all to my panelists for being here. I very much appreciate you all for this insightful and I think just amazing conversation about how character can be just depicted in audio only formats and everything. And once again, I would love to shout out our panelists and let people know where they can find them and shout out any upcoming projects you're going at. Please feel free to drop your links in the chat as well when we do this. Let's go ahead and go with Emma first, leading us off.
Yes, hello. I'm Emma. I've had a lovely time being here. I do not have any personal social medias at this time, but you can find the show that I made last year, Arrhythmia, out on the internet at arrhythmia.card.co. You can find in the next month or two the wonderful script that I wrote for This Address Does Not Exist out in the world. That will be coming out, I believe, in the later spring. It is an anthology show with a lot of other really wonderful writers and actors and designers. I'm so excited. All of the episodes are going to be great. And in about an hour, you can find some more of my work at the closing ceremony for AuFiCon. So that's the most immediate one.
Woo! Thank you so much, Emma. Amazing. Doodles, do you want to let us know your social medias, shout outs?
Of course, you can find me at Doodles Paulas. That's Doodles and then the name Paulas with an S at the end. Uh, in several places like Instagram, Tumblr, Blue Sky. I use the same username everywhere just so people can find me easier. Where I post, you guessed it, my art. I
Beautiful.
there's also my audio drama Becker Tales, which is going to have new tale dropping the 21st of February. So keep an eye out for that.
Woo!
It will have like gay people, lesbianism, doomed eerie. Oh my god, you should totally go check that out. It has Instagram, Tumblr, Blue Sky, all Becker Tales. And also, you should check out the Mechadova engine, whose Kickstarter starts February 18th of this month, I believe, where I am the character designer for the show.
Mm,
Because, yeah, they have stickers that they're going to be selling with the Kickstarter that I have designed the characters and I've drawn them. So if you want to support my character art and art in general, please go check them out as well.
absolutely. Amazing. Excited for all those projects, Doodles. Thank you so much. And Hero, you want to give us your shout out before we drop the mic actually time?
Yep. You can find us Monstrous Productions pretty much anywhere. Monstrous Agonies or Traveling Light. Traveling Light is our current ongoing show. Monstrous Agonies is now finished. And yeah, do follow us on socials because we've got that super exciting 1920s supernatural detective story coming out later this year, which you are definitely going to want to be all over. It's going to be lit. So I popped my link tree in the chat. But yeah, Monstrous Productions. That's us. That's me. Go forth.
Amazing. Yay! So excited about all these projects. Thank you, Hero. Thank you to all my panelists once again. Once again, my name is Rowan. I will drop my link, in the chat, twinstrangersproductions.com. Hee hee hee. Um, and I would love for y'all to check out the next thing on the AuFiCon list, which is the closing ceremony, as Emma has mentioned. They have the episode that will be playing from the podcast on air segments that have been going continuously throughout uh, the convention itself. And once again, shout out to the Podcast Book Club for organizing this. Thank y'all all very much for being here. Thank you